Makes sense. All right, we're recording. All right, welcome everybody. Happy to have all of you today. I see really good attendance at the different sessions, which is awesome. So that's just great to have so many people. Obviously, it'd be great, even better to see everybody in person. We'll hopefully get that at one of our regional conferences or maybe next year. But it's very good to see a lot of familiar faces and names. PeopleSoft's a small world, so it's good to see all of you again. It's like we're a little fraternity of PeopleSoft people. Anyway, nice to see everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Just a quick housekeeping. I do not have a moderator today. So what that means is that everybody is muted on the way into the session. That's a setting that we put on, but you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. So I would ask you to, if you want to ask a question, go ahead and unmute yourself, ask a question, and then we'll discuss, and then you'll mute yourself when we're done with the question, and we'll go back to the presentation. You can raise your hand, you can put something in chat, all that. I won't say it. So you can do it, but I'll check probably at the very end of this, the presentation, and check for that stuff. So anyway, very happy to have you if you're here to learn more about chatbots, specifically chatbots in financials. You're in the right spot. And with that, I'm going to get going here. So I'm going to kick off. There we go. Hopefully you can all see my screen. And I see my title was just PeopleSoft Chatbots. I could have done better with my title, or make it more consistent with what was on the site. This is chatbots for financials. So I don't remember the title, the use case for financials, chatbots and financials. That's me, Cameron McClary, Vice President, SpearMC. I have been doing PeopleSoft work for a long time. This morning I was joking that I've been doing PeopleSoft work since the Clinton administration. Hopefully, I would imagine that most of you have as well. I mean, that's just how things go with PeopleSoft, these days. I could say I've been doing PeopleSoft since I had hair. I mean, there's lots of different ways to say that. Bottom line is I'm old, or maybe, oldish, let's say. I've been doing PeopleSoft for a long time. It's basically the only thing I've done in my career, which I really like. But I've added other things throughout my different places I've been at. And in addition to PeopleSoft, I love learning about new emerging technology and how that emerging technology can be integrated with something that is robust and solid, and can we call it legacy, like PeopleSoft. And so chatbots is one of those things that I've gotten to explore, in addition to some of the other things that I've gotten certification in, like Oracle Guided Learning and Cloud Infrastructure. I did a session this morning on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. If you want to learn more about that, go check out that recording. And then later today, a couple hours, I'm doing one on Oracle Guided Learning. And trust me when I say Oracle Guided Learning is the one that you need to attend. I'm doing 5 sessions this Reconnect conference. If there's one session, I say you got to go attend Oracle Guided Learning. It's a game changer with what's happening with how you do learning and guided processing in PeopleSoft. I'm very excited about it. So anyway, that's later today. I joined SpearMC 4.5 years ago from being a full-time employee. So I've been in a lot of your, if you guys are a full-time employee, if you manage PeopleSoft support implementations for your organization, that was my world for many, many years until I joined consulting just 4.5 years ago. And I get to do what I did for one company. I get to do that for many companies, which is put together roadmaps and explore new features and functionalities and technology, and figure out how that can work for my clients, basically. And so I get to oversee projects and put together virtual teams and do all that stuff. That's a little bit about me. Services. So SpearMC has been around for almost 20 years now. We're getting up there. I joined 4.5 years ago, but SpearMC has been joined at the hip with, from a brand perspective, with PeopleSoft. We completely 100% focus on PeopleSoft. we really don't do other things unless it touches PeopleSoft. So here you can see kind of what we do that surrounds PeopleSoft as our core, whether that's different pillars, financials, HCM, campus, the way we do work, the way we work with you, whether that's a managed service, whether it's a staff aug, put together a project team. We do all sorts of different types of arrangements for the type of work we do with you guys. Hosting and moves to cloud infrastructure, emerging technology, which is what we're talking about today with chatbots, and then training and Kanban analytics. So I'm getting a message saying that we want to do transcription. So I think I can say enable. Okay, live transcription has been, okay. All right. So now I see everything I say on my screen. No problem. All right, let me go back to this. Okay. Our focus on specifically PeopleSoft on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure was recognized by Gartner a couple of years ago in the 2021 Gartner Market Guide for Oracle Managed and Professional Services. That's obviously something very important for us and something we always talk about because it's very important. And it really is a reflection of our focus and drive to get PeopleSoft organizations using PeopleSoft onto OCI. We really think it's a game changer, and being recognized by Gartner is hugely important for an organization like ours. That's we're not a Deloitte, we're not that size, and so for us to be recognized, it's really a big deal. This is our sessions at Reconnect this week, and yes, there's a lot of them. We are all over the place. Got a ton of sessions. I won't even try to go through them. There's just a lot of really good stuff. So definitely whatever you're here for, whatever topic, technology, feature, functionality, tool sets, whatever, check it out. Like I said, later today at 1:45 Central, that's, what is that, 11:45 West Coast time where I'm at, Oracle Guided Learning, next generation of real-time training and guided processing in PeopleSoft. So definitely check that one out. If you can't make that one, I'm doing a demo of OGL again on Thursday at 10:15 Pacific, 12:15 Central. So check that out. Okay, let's get into chatbots a little bit. And again, a reminder, go ahead and unmute yourself if you have any questions, and we can just talk through it as we go. Okay, let's do a brief history of conversational interfaces. And I asked you the question, which of these do you actually recognize? So I would assume that most people look at this and say, I think that looks like a telegraph, and that's what that is. This one is called IBM Shoebox, and it was like an early sort of attempt at tracking things that people said and try to pull that back out in terms of like messaging back, saying, this is what I understood you said. It didn't really have a lot of intelligence, but it was a very early idea. This was something that I believe that MIT created, something called ELIZA, which was kind of both cool technologically, but kind of funny as well. And it was supposed to be like a psychotherapist. And you could type in questions to ELIZA, and it mimicked essentially a therapist. And so if you can kind of see that in the screen there, it says, ELIZA says, is something bothering you? And then you type in, men are all alike. And then ELIZA comes back and says, what is the connection, do you suppose? And then you write in, well, they're always bugging us about something or other. And then it keeps going with different questions. And it appears as if ELIZA is actually having a conversation with you, when in reality, it was just using very basic algorithm to send that next question. And it didn't really have a lot of intelligence, but it was an early example of sort of how people wanted to use computers and technology to create basically a conversational interface. And then lastly, kind of pop culture here, something called Oregon Trail is the name of a computer game that maybe some of you have played. And being from Seattle, we always joked that Oregon Trail, oh, you always die of dysentery whenever you go play Oregon Trail. So anyway, all right, so conversational interface. A user interface for computers that mimics a conversation with real humans. So that's basically the concept of conversational user interface, UI. instead of having the user need to learn how to use a system by navigating through a menu or entering the right information, the conversational interface tries to provide an opportunity for that user to speak naturally or to type naturally, and for the machine to learn versus the other way around. So it kind of turns the tables a little bit. So every conversational interface, even all the way back to those early concepts of ELIZA and Shoebox and Telegraph, has the same pattern, which is there has to be an interpretation of the intent of the person or the user. And nowadays we talk about something called natural language processing, which is something that the chatbot is using to try to interpret what is being said. Once it's interpreted, it gets matched up with something called a dialogue flow, which is basically if you think of it like a path or like a tree that says, okay, I've got you onto the right branch, and now from there it's going to have additional branches, but I've matched you with what I think is the dialogue flow of which is going to eventually take you to where you want to go. Once it gets you into that dialogue flow, it maybe asks a follow-up question and gets some information from you. It goes and retrieves information from the source, and it translates that back into a conversational response. Every conversational interface has this exact flow, whether you're talking about even something that's not actually in spoken language, but something that's writing to you, or even ELIZA, it's trying to do this type of thing. And so PeopleSoft chatbots are basically the same concept. If we think about a traditional concept of, or a traditional use case in PeopleSoft, and what would normally happen in a multi-step process in a PeopleSoft transaction, you see this is a similar, this is you could change the terms here, but it would follow the exact same pattern, which is a user eventually finds a link to PeopleSoft, opens a navigator, navigates to self-service, clicks on time reporting, report time, request absence, select the absence type in the date from, type in date to, submit. And so there's like a 9-step process to do something like submitting time or entering sick time. In order to do that, the user, if you think about it, the user would have to know that I need to where to go in PeopleSoft, right? I need to know what that navigator button does. I need to know that what sort of path in the menu to get to. And eventually I need to find out, get to a right screen and into the data in the right way. And so the burden is on an administrator to teach these people how to do this. And, you could sort of, make that more of a generic thing where an end user picks up the phone, calls for help, asks the basic question, the help person, whether that's IT help desk or a financials support desk, whatever, financial system support. They hear the question, they try to interpret what they want. They come back and say, well, do you mean this or do you mean that? So there's kind of a handshake agreement on like what's happening, right? And then eventually the helper gets into PeopleSoft and navigates to the right spot, asks for required information, repeats it, and it's just kind of a back and forth, quite rapidly going back and forth, trying to go through this process. And basically, in language of conversation interface, this is friction. It creates a lot of back and forth and a lot of with the user having to do a lot of different kinds of things and knowing what to do to get down to the actual answer of what they really wanted. And in the language, that's friction. So the goal for a conversation interface is really to reduce friction and to not make the person go through so many efforts. And by the way, again, just a little plug for my Orca Guided Learning. All of this that you see can be solved with chatbots. It also the use case, the issue that we're trying to solve can also be solved with Oracle Guided Learning. So again, come to that one to learn how you solve the same issue. But anyway,
excuse me, Cameron.
Yeah.
You brought up a very valid point. I'm sorry, this is Mary from AARP. As you go through your presentation, can you sort of highlight the benefits of a chat box versus Oracle Learning? Because to me, you're right. They're sort of on the same plateau, but I'm trying to understand, has one outpaced another? If you know, do you need to have both? So anything you can to sort of differentiate and help us to understand maybe where it would be better to use one versus the other would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And I probably should have spent more time doing a comparison between chatbots and Oracle guided learning and kind of compare and contrast. I haven't prepared that. So I really, in my mind, these two things kind of came up separately. But as I think more about it, they really answer a lot of same problems. There's significant differences with the price. I shouldn't say significant. There's going to be differences in price. So how you quote one, how you quote, or quotes or the cost of one, cost of the other. There's ongoing sort of support in different ways with the two. I would say let's probably have that as a follow-up conversation where I can get into a lot more detail. But it's a good point. And I'll try to point that out as much as I can. Come to the OGL session. We'll talk about it there, more detail about OGL. Okay, so this again, the back and forth and the needs for a user to understand what to do and where to go really creates a lot of friction for them. And so the conversational interface really is something to consider with respect to changing demographics and where you see a lot of chatbots in a lot of places. I would say chatbots are more intelligent and offer a different interface than OGL. OGL is more like it provides a guide through the process. I mean, that sort of diminishes the value of OGL, which I don't really mean to do. It's a different interface. Really, the interface is just different, I guess I'd say. But we do see these chatbots everywhere. I mean, I see them on my banking application or website. They're really a lot of places, and some people, it depends on kind of your audience if they would accept a chatbot. And again, I would say that what I've seen is people who have used an application, maybe some of people in an older demographic, probably are not going to engage in a chatbot. That's just not how they think. It's not natural to them. I would say a younger audience probably would consider using chatbots. And so if you think about the changing dynamics of the workforce, I mean, really talking about, I think it's by the end of this decade, over 50%, of your workforce will be a millennial or a Gen Z. I mean, that's a big number, right? And so we have to start to transition the way we look at this stuff and can't really approach it the way we would approach it 10, 15 years ago. So chatbots is just basically, it's going to be something that not only will employees accept, but I would change it to they're going to expect, right? They're going to expect to be able to have an interface where they don't have to learn the interface. The interface learns them based on their natural language. And I think that's the real key there with chatbots here. So let's take a look at specifically PeopleSoft chatbots and what they're doing. You have all probably heard at this point, if you've attended Paco's session, if you attend any sessions, you're going to learn about this thing called Picasso, which is essentially a grouping of all of the individual chatbots that had been created originally. All of them got grouped into one interface called Picasso, which is PeopleSoft Intelligent Chat Assistant from Oracle. I'm sure they changed the words there to make it work with Picasso. But anyway, that's what it is. And so obviously we've got employee focused ones that are HCM focused. And then we got supplier and ones that are, actually, I take it back. The employee focused one, expense and requisition, are on the financial side, but they're more employee individual focused. Down at the bottom are the new ones as of the last year: supplier public and supplier secure, which I think is a really, really good use case for chatbots. So we'll be drilling into those a little bit more. But if you haven't seen it, I mean, you've got this little chat icon down the lower right part of the screen. Click on that, and you're going to launch then the Picasso interface, and that will allow you to then either navigate through the individual assistants, which are basically the individual chatbots. So you have expense, you've got requisition, you've got the other parts of within supplier. You have the supplier ones, and then within that it has sort of some three, like you can see, three of the most commonly requested items. or we could call them intents, which is a chatbot term for what the user is actually trying to get to. Okay. And we'll go into that a little bit more. So just a quick little technical thing. Chatbots do require a subscription to Oracle Digital Assistant. The chatbots themselves are free. So I just want to be clear about that. So the chatbots themselves are free, but getting access to them and having them work is not free. That's the Oracle Digital Assistant piece. The Oracle Digital Assistant, I drill in a little bit more about what ODA does versus what PeopleSoft does. But you do need that ODA piece. And you could set up a chatbot and work with a non-Oracle digital assistant. So before Oracle provided ODA, there was a platform with Google and probably other providers that you would be able to use to create a chatbot. But now that Oracle has ODA and delivers these chatbots that are integrated with ODA, there's really no reason to go to any non-Oracle option here for chatbots. You do require, there's a minimum people tools, as time goes on, this isn't as much of an issue for people anymore. And there's a minimum PUM image for each of the pillars. So for financials, it's 33. If you want to do text messaging, be able to text from your phone, you can do that. It does require a Twilio account and integration, and then an additional PUM image of 37. Was there a question?
Yeah, quick question. So does that mean we can't use this if we're on-prem only, or?
Oh yes, you can. So your on-prem only means PeopleSoft, but your ODA would be still the cloud-based subscription. And that's okay. So yeah, so just because you're on-prem PeopleSoft, you can still leverage lots of outside emerging technology that are on the Oracle Cloud Platform, or if you want to use other technologies. In the same way that, for example, you could connect your on-prem PeopleSoft to like Azure authentication. For example, if you were using Office 365 and authentication through Microsoft Azure, your PeopleSoft is still on-prem, but you're leveraging cloud technology, cloud SaaS applications, basically, which is what this is. Same thing with OGL. OGL works the same way. It's a SaaS application that supports your on-prem PeopleSoft. So there's no real division with that. Okay, so when you move to 85707, and then there's also a patch for 858, et cetera, you get what's called the Chatbot Integration Framework. And there's three pieces of that. There's the configuration updates of PeopleSoft. There's an install that comes with it for your web server. And then there is this ability to do the import of the skills from ODA. So let's take a look at each one of those. So in PeopleSoft, you have these app services, which are essentially, it's a reusable component that creates basically all the code that does this connection type of stuff. So for example, you can just have a security authentication component that's in your app services. So you don't have to, every time you create a chatbot, you don't have to say, well, this is how you authenticate the user and what access that user has. You don't have to figure all that out because it's just basically an app service that's integrated with this chatbot integration framework. Same thing, so that's sort of core, I call those core services. And then they have app services per application or per bot, basically. So for example, a service that does extraction of absence information or an extraction of requisition data. So these are core components and app services that are pulling out that information. You don't have to write those for yourself. Before a chatbot, before this all happened, people were creating chatbots and they had to write all this stuff through people code. And now it's just delivered to you that you just get to use it. There's also some setup pages with enterprise components that have to do with branding and things like that for the chatbots. And then there's also then the chat client that is that little icon that shows up on your PeopleSoft screen. That's the ... So that's a little chat client. All that comes in from the PeopleSoft side. And then here's just a quick screenshot of what app services looks like. Again, these are just delivered to you, just have them available, whether you use them or not, that's beside the point. These are all there for you. You can create new app services if you ever wanted to take a bolt-on component and build a service for that and to reuse that. You could build that as app service yourself. But for all these things that the chatbot uses, it's just delivered out of the box. You just have them available for you. So kind of drilling into this one for employee balances, you can see there's an activity guide that just walks you through all the setup. Again, you don't have to touch any of this stuff. If you had a reason to change the description or make modifications or whatever, you can edit these and change them. But then you're essentially customizing a delivered app service. So we recommend not to do that.
Sorry, I'm kind of new. So just to
Yeah.
sum that up, for example, because it's applying the security settings you've already input, if I want to look up my own absence balance, it's going to tell me, but it's not going to tell me anybody else's. It's going to know what data I have access to in the system.
Correct.
Correct.
And you can see, I think it's like the third one there. You can see authenticate GUID. So that's your authentication. It basically says I'm authenticating this user is a valid user. And it's making it a secure connection. And then there's sort of framework to say what security does this person have. And so if you say, what are my requisitions? It knows who you are, right? That's all done, delivered. It also verifies that you have access to requisitions. You know, for example, if you have.
So an example of financial data, I may have access to certain chart fields of data, but maybe I don't get any payroll GL information. Is it going to know that?
Yeah, I mean, we probably need to take it offline and just kind of get into some of the details of what you're looking for. But so, because I'm just trying to think of what chatbot you'd actually be talking about there. So like, because you've got the delivered chatbot. So if you're talking about you're building a new chatbot on your own, then you're kind of off the grid of delivered functionality. You can build your own, and then you're building exactly as you want it, you know, what you have access to. You get to leverage, again, some of the delivered app services like authentication and some of the reused, but you would need to create new ones, like, for example, look up, you know, balances or something like that, right? So you would have to create those for yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So we talked about this, that there's, again, there's a web SDK for the chat client. That's that little thing that's going to pop up when people go into PeopleSoft and see that ... with chatbot. So that's just delivered for you. And then on the ODA side, a chatbot equals a skill in the language of Oracle Digital Assistant. And I got some screenshots there to look at for that. So let's take a look at the Oracle Digital Assistant. So we talked about what you get on the chatbot side or through the code from PeopleTools. And then you have a subscription to ODA. ODA is essentially a cloud platform, again, that connects to your on-prem. If you're on-prem, it's fine. Or on some, even if you run PeopleSoft on AWS or Azure, it doesn't matter. You can use the ODA to connect to that. In ODA, you have then the skills, which, you know, one skill equals a chatbot. There's intents, which I'll show you here in a second. Entities, which are just components that are used within the intents. And then the big thing is the dialogue flow, which again is like that tree, that decision tree, getting somebody from an initial request to eventually the answer of what they're looking for. It's that flow of getting that dialogue. So again, each skill that you see here, each tile is a chatbot. And what I didn't say is the Picasso is what's called a digital assistant. The digital assistant then groups multiple chatbots, if that makes sense. Each of these is delivered and then updated. And so you can use a delivered one and make some updates to it, and then retain your updates when the update comes from Oracle. So when the update comes in, you can basically re-baseline and either start over or bring in the updates as they come in from Oracle, but retain your changes. And so I'm going to show you actually an example of what you might want to change. Here you can see, so you go into one specific one and you get to so the extend it, right? So meaning that I'm taking it, I'm going to extend and make some additional changes to it, or I can clone it, which once you clone it, of course, you're off the grid. So as they make changes to theirs, you're not getting changes to your cloned version. But you can extend it if you want to retain changes as they come in from updates from Oracle. Okay, so here we're drilling into one specific one. This is the ePro requester inquiry bot. And what you'll see here is on the left side, you have 4 intents. And the intent is essentially these high level, we can call them intentions from the person who might be interacting with the requisition bot, right? So for example, they might want to get an item status, right? Where is this? What is going on with the status of my requisition, right? So that intent would have then use these intent entities, which would help determine, who the user is, that's the person, right? Or the requester. There's a duration, which is a time span, there's a date, there's an input string. So these are different components that are used within the intent. And then the last piece is the utterances, which is that the utterances create a scoring mechanism. I don't know if I have that in here. I think I have that. I'll show you a demo of the utterances later. But basically the utterances says, like, if you say, I want status, it knows that the word status is an utterance from the user, and that utterance correlates to the intent get item status. So it's taking the intention of the user, kind of like I showed that really high level graphic at the beginning, is taking the request from the user and it's correlating it into one of these decision paths, which is the intent, saying, okay, you said status, therefore I'm scoring that you want to get an item status, and therefore I'm going to get you into that path. All of the code then of that path is in actual code format. And you can see it here in this, what's called the flow editor. What's really cool is that I think last year they converted this to an actual visual flow. So now it's a lot easier to manage visually this code. This will require a developer or programmer. This is not something that a business analyst or a functional analyst would get in here and start messing with this flow. A lot of this, again, it's all delivered in the delivered chatbots. So unless you're saying, I don't like how the flow works and we need to modify the flow, you wouldn't be touching this. But if you want to create your own brand new chatbot, or if you want to modify the flow, you get in here and actually modify the actual code. And again, for that, you would need essentially like I think it's JavaScript, if I'm not mistaken, JavaScript programmer to come in here and make the changes to the code. Okay, so you might be thinking, okay, what happens with what's happening with ODA? What's happening with PeopleSoft? Because there's these two components, they have to work in connection. So what's happening on each side? So this is a little quick comparison of what's happening on each side. So ODA has the natural language processor. That is the powerhouse engine behind everything that takes, when I say I want to get away, it's going to understand what that means, and it's going to translate that into essentially that natural language. That's a real thing. Google has a natural language processor, and ODA is using a natural language processor. Creating and maintaining a channel, so that's connection between ODA and PeopleSoft. That happens within ODA, and how to manage that channel. The conversational logic, which I'll show here in a second. The dialogue flow, which I just showed, and then the connectivity. So what happens in PeopleSoft? Well, PeopleSoft has the source data, right? So status of the requisition, what are the lines of the requisition? It has the application logic using the app service framework, which is what I showed before with app services for authentication and reusable components to find statuses and things of that nature. It's got the user interface, which is that ... to actually manage it. And it also manages the actual messages. So the ODA has sort of a placeholder, which I'm going to show you here in a second, but the actual messages can be managed within PeopleSoft. And I think I show that to you I think later on after the demos. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick, these are actually videos of demos, so it's not a live demo, but it's going to show you the same concept. So really focusing on financials here, as that's what we're here for. I'm going to show a couple different demos. This one's just a quick demo of using the Supplier secure bot. So let me click on this. And so here, the user's logging in as a supplier, and they see all these different tabs, but they also see this little chat bot, and they say, you know what, I don't know how to get to where I'm wanting to go. I'm just going to use the chat bot. And so in the chatbot, they have the ability then to type whatever they want and get some information. So they typed in help, and there's a dialogue that comes back to them. It says, hello, it knows who they are, James Scott. And then it answers with this, I'm Picasso, I can answer some questions. Here's some things you might want to do. So here's the collaboration assistant. This now is getting into one specific skill. Picasso's the wrapper that gets them into the availability of getting into the individual bots. But Picasso is going to show the collaboration one. Here's just a general assistant that can help them with, company announcements. Now, a person could have just typed in, show me company announcements. It would have skipped this step and gone straight to that. But if you just say help, it's going to offer you some ideas of what you might want to go for, like invoice and payment as well. So all these, again, are just individual chat bots that are grouped within the Picasso wrapper. All of that is available, delivered. Again, once you pay for ODA, you can just essentially set this stuff up and turn it on. And there's some things you would maybe do after the fact, but here's, this is what, so here we go, looking for rejected shipments. And the chatbot is going to search for that. It knows, Picasso knows which chatbot to bring them into. In this case, it's the, which one is this one? The collaboration one, I'm guessing. And it comes back and says, I've found 4 receipts that might be related to what you're looking for. And so then the user can simply look at those, perhaps click through them and decide which one they want to look for, and then get into one specific one. Say, okay, where is this receipt for this supplier? So again, a very specific example of a supplier coming in here and wanting to know about the receipts and saying, hey, this was a shipment, was it received? And maybe they want to go on and say, where's the payment for this, or something of that nature. One more, I think, example. Let me just kind of fast forward here to another example of something they're going to type in here. I think I got one more thing here. So again, the idea with Supplier, secure Supplier, it really is a nice thing to, if you're going to do the supplier connection, eSupplier, and you want to allow your suppliers to come in to the portal, supplier portal, and be able to do some things. Chatbot might be something that they might even request to you and say, hey, can we use a chatbot, because I don't know how to use your system and get information. But if I want to say show unpaid invoices, that's pretty easy for me to just type in as a supplier, right? So it's an offering that you can provide to your suppliers and make that available. Okay, so they said show me invoices not processed, and there you go. Okay, so let me close out of that. How do I get out of there? Okay, that's not, I didn't do that right. Okay. Okay, so this one, what I want to show you, so that's just the again, delivered chatbot for Supplier. This is an older example, so forgive me that I have individual chatbots here and they're not put together into Picasso. I did this a couple years ago, but it shows you exactly how you would go about modifying the back end very easily without doing any code. I want to, for example, change some utterances so that, again, that's the thing that somebody might type in. And I want to recognize what that is and to push it into a specific intent. Okay. So what you're going to see here is I'm going to open up the absence. Again, this one's an HCM, but it's the same concept here. So I'm going to come to the absence assistant and I'm going to type something to the effect of, I want to get away or something like that. Oh, sorry, need help. So the first thing it's going to show is need help. And it says, sorry, I don't understand your input. Okay, so the delivery chatbot at that time didn't understand when you said need help. It didn't understand what intent you were looking for. So here I am in the back end in the skill. And I say, well, if somebody says need help, really that means that's an entry greeting, right? I want to match that utterance, need help, with entry greeting. Therefore, I have to add that utterance in here. So what I'm doing is I'm just typing in help. I hit return, and now that's registered in here as an utterance. So right here, I'm highlighting where that utterance is, and it's now going to match up with the entry greeting. So now if I come back here, and this is real time, I didn't do anything with my video. This is real time. I now type in help again, and now you recognize that it says, okay, now I understood you were looking for an entry greeting, and therefore I'm going to respond back to say, hello, John Patterson, I can help you with your blah, blah, blah. Please note that I'm a chatbot. If anything goes wrong, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So just let me pause right there before I go on to the next one. So very simple to take the delivered chatbot and update utterances behind the scenes to match up with specific intents of the user. So in this case, help, I want help to go automatically to the, I want to respond to, with an entry greeting, meaning, hi, welcome, here's what you can do, right? Okay, so let's go on to another one here. And this one, I'm going to type in, I want to get away. And I'm just using slang and not real words. But again, it says, sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm here in the absence assistant. And so I'm going to scroll back up. And what I really mean by that, by I want to get away, is I want to request a time off, request an absence. So there's an intent, a deliberate intent here for request absence, again, out of the box. And I'm going to simply put in the word getaway. I'm going to do it two different ways, getaway one word, getaway two words. I'm going to register that as an utterance that's tied to the absence or the request, absence request. Okay. And there you see getaway, or those are two now registered in there. And I come back over here, again, real time, come back and say, and now the user says, I want to get away. And now it recognizes automatically that the person had an intent to request time off. And there's my response to that. When does your absence begin? And what I don't show is that the user can say, well, it begins on April 15th or today. Again, it using natural language processing, it understands how to translate that into actual code that's going to go be put into that actual transaction that goes into PeopleSoft. Okay. So that was kind of showed you how to do that entry greeting. I did want to show one more thing here, which is that we talked about how even in ODA, we looked up in the code, this is the dialog flow, and you have to go all the way down here to entry greeting, but it shows you that it's actually using what's called a message catalog. And if you're familiar with PeopleSoft, this is PeopleSoft. So you have a message set and a message number. That's what this is right here. So if, in other words, ODA is referring to message set, message catalog in PeopleSoft, which means that you get to control that in PeopleSoft, what comes back in that message. So here you can see, here's the message set number. You've got a description, absence management chatbot, and a message number. And here you can see a combination of the actual text with a variable that's going to come in from the user. Again, that's the app service that's passing that in. And you can see that right here under the replace the %1. So I'm not a JavaScript programmer. I've never taken a class in JavaScript, but I can see this, that it says, well, there's my message set and catalog number. I can see this replacing that with the username. And therefore right there, I can change this entire text here. I can personalize this, I can brand it, I can change the phone number, I can change the email address. And that's what I did here. Actually, I changed it to, hrsupport@spearmc.com. And so just changing that message, now ODA goes back to PeopleSoft, gets the right message, the one that we've modified. And now we don't have this, generic sanitized language in the chatbot that comes from Oracle. We can personalize and make that contextual to our organization and make it branded with the way we want to have that come through. All right, so last thing, we're just going to kind of focus then in on the very specific use case here for financials. So we've got the supplier public portal, which focuses on things before the supplier becomes registered as a supplier. So this would be anybody that could be a bidder, right? Somebody who's coming in to be looking at potential bidding events. And by the way, if you want more information on setting this up, supplier connection, strategic sourcing, all of that those modules that do all this functionality, take my email and we'll help you guys with, getting that all set up. But once you have all that set up, then you can then apply this chatbot on top of it, which will allow you to have that, again, that supplier public portal bot that you can use. Here's some of the things that it can do: event calendars, some contact information, announcements, how to do registration as a bidder supplier. And then new in 44, you've got now bidding opportunities and award events. Again, requires strategic sourcing. The rest of the stuff just requires supplier portal. The ones up above just requires supplier portal, does not require strategic sourcing to do these other ones. Once a user or an organization is registered as a supplier, then they get access then to the supplier secure. Again, that's a separate implementation and how you set that all up. But once you have that connection and working, so you have suppliers coming in and logging in, you then can add in then this additional supplier secure bot or assistant that then handles things like PO acknowledgements, overdue shipments, rejected receipts, and then also then invoices and dispute and open invoices. Those two require e-settlements, which is again a different module that you would add on top of all this. So all of this is really creating that interface for your users to ask questions, get response back in a conversational format, to really create a very rich experience for your suppliers specifically. And really, if you think about, your suppliers are never going to really learn your system, although we do talk about that in Oracle Guide Learning, again, on how we can guide a supplier through this process. But again, a chatbot back and forth within a conversational interface as if they're talking to somebody real, that's going to be in your chatbot. And getting all this access to all these different features are a pretty nice option for your suppliers. Okay, so kind of, finishing up here, I wanted to, again, this is not, I'm not getting into a lot of the technical aspects here. I just want to focus on kind of the big picture. And I really wanted you guys to take a look at the cost considerations, because, ODA, when, if you want to go through and do a quote on ODA, it's not, I would say it's not cheap. So when you think about it, you got to go past, first of all, you got to go past like the initial price for one specific chatbot. You got to think of it as a platform that you'd be able to use for a lot of different uses, both in HCM and financials. With all, once you buy the platform, you get all these chatbots and skills for free, basically, free, quote unquote, but you get all those, sort of baked in and delivered. So you need to consider, first of all, broad use of it, but to kind of craft to frame the conversation internally about how to think about this, you have what I call quantitative and qualitative factors to consider. So the first thing to really kind of evaluate to say, is chatbot's going to be worth it for us, is you need to kind of look through your organization and determine, how much time do these different support organizations spend answering essentially repetitive questions. So that could be a supplier management function within AP. It could be purchasing, who is answering questions about, where's my requisition? Where's my, I put this requisition in, where is it? Why don't I have my stuff yet, right? So how often are we spending that, and can we quantify that? And it can be quantified, right? You can quantify how many calls you take, how often you answer repetitive questions, and is that the best use of a person, right? A person that you pay a salary to do that work, right? There's a question there. And by the way, when that person leaves, you have to retrain and start over with the next person. You wouldn't have to do that with a chatbot, obviously. ODA can be licensed as a platform, which is what I was mentioning before. And so that means the more chatbots you deploy, the lower the per cost request, and the higher the ROI. So again, when you're putting together quantitative analysis of this, you're saying, first, what's my existing costs associated with answering repetitive questions? And then you're like, okay, what would be my future state of paying for ODA? And you're really just looking at one cost there's not variability to the cost, because you're buying the platform. And so the more use you get out of it, the more you spread that one initial cost across the different uses across your organization. but I think that a lot of times people spend too much time on the quantitative when they look at new functionality and new technology. And I really think people need to spend a little time on the qualitative considerations as well. So there is a question about customer satisfaction, and your customer can be either an internal customer, like your requisitioners and managers across your organization who are simply trying to find where their stuff is. And so there's a qualitative sort of customer satisfaction. And by the way, if you do chatbots poorly, you're going to create dissatisfaction with your customers. So be careful about that, right? You can't just put this chatbot in and say, oh, we're good, and therefore our satisfaction is going to be raised. They could actually be more frustrated if that chatbot isn't really effective in answering the question quickly. So think about that. But you do have to consider, your customer satisfaction, both internally for requisitioners as well as external suppliers, for example, or just other employees. There's also a satisfaction. I always think about this too. Like, let's not just think about our customers. Let's think about our internal groups. And these are like our purchasing groups, our AP groups, our supplier management groups, who have their own job satisfaction as well and their own productivity. People are generally going to be more satisfied if they feel more productive. And answering repetitive questions, some people are happy with that and feel that they're adding a lot of value to their organization by answering the same questions over and over. Other people aren't satisfied with that, and they want to do higher level, higher value activities that at this point we can't automate, right? So more analytical. So there is that qualitative sort of concept of taking a look at the people who are doing these types of repetitive answers, IT help desk, that type of thing. And, if I always talk about IT help desk as one of your highest turnover areas in your organization, because it's got generally low job satisfaction. So think about that as well. Can you expand the reach of your application to an audience or audiences that normally would not log in to PeopleSoft if the interface changes? Again, we talked about the Oracle guided learning as well, but bottom line is think about that as another element to your qualitative analysis. Can we get to more people, right? And that would increase adoption and overall value for your application. And there is multilingual support. We didn't really talk about that, but you can offer multilingual support through the chatbot as well. And that might, again, kind of goes back to the third point. You might be able to expand reach of your application if you get to other people who English is a second language and would otherwise have a difficult time making a phone call and getting help with that. And so perhaps that would be helpful. So for us, SpearMC, we offer services with this. Obviously, that's why we're here. We do everything with PeopleSoft, right? So this is one of the things we do, whether that's just simple advisory and we can sort of just talk you through and talk through kind of the use. If you want to take, the next step and do training, if you want to our help with deployment or eventually, maintenance. So we anything on the spectrum, we're happy to help you. We are all in on PeopleSoft, and if that means leveraging new technology, you guys want to explore that, that's fantastic. We'd love for you guys to explore this as a making your system more feature rich. Okay, so just in conclusion, chatbots are here. They're going to increase both your user or customer satisfaction as well as that admin group satisfaction. I really want to stress both sides of that equation. And it's going to increase productivity both, again, if you do it well, right? And you can't just throw chatbots out there and say, oh, we're good. You're really going to take time to, do that intense, making sure that the intents are coming through correctly, making sure that the messaging is coming back correctly. All of that is you're going to spend some time on that. And like I said, you can leverage the delivered bots, but you're going to personalize it with utterances and messaging. And that's it. And I think we're right at about time. And any questions? I will stop sharing. You get this deck if you want my email address or phone number. You can get that from the deck, but I'm going to go back and just see if we have any questions in the chat or anything like that.
Sorry, I've got a question for you. Have you integrated this with Microsoft Teams or Slack or anything like that? I know you can do it. Have you had any experience with doing that?
I don't, but we have some experience with that. I can get the right people involved if that was something that you were looking to do. I haven't personally. I kind of oversee projects and stuff like that, but we could get some answers for you. Sorry, who asked that question?
Oh, Tanya, sorry, Oracle.
Okay. Yeah, so just ping me afterwards, and we can hook you up. Any other questions?
Just getting back to the comparison between chatbots and Oracle guided learning. So in a general sense, would it be fair to say that chatbots are more about information queries, whereas the guided learning is more about how to do this, how to do that?
Yeah, you guys are bringing up this. This is just a great point, and I really should have thought about like how to like give you guys a comparison of the two. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about it, but I know they address the same thing. I mean, just sort of thinking off the cuff here. I mean, chatbot is more, it's obviously more conversational, and it can go in lots of different directions. Like one chatbot, you'd be like, hey, what are you here for? And then the person can type in, I'm here to get information about my invoices, where's my payment, where's my requisition. That ability to sort of launch into many different spots, whether it's this chatbot, that chatbot, within that chatbot, it has different, intents within that, and get massive tree of potential information. I would say that's where chatbots are really good at, and having that ability to just take whatever you ask for and just take you to different spots. OGL, which you're going to see later, is really more about guiding somebody through something very specific. I probably wouldn't set up the OGL guide to start out with saying, here is the 20 different things that you can do, click on the one you want to do. But that's essentially what's happening with the chatbot behind the scenes, right? So the OGL is going to be more like welcoming somebody to, let's say, the supplier portal and say, hey, welcome. Would you like a tour of this, right? Yes or no. So it's more binary. It's going to take them down a path to say, okay, here's what you can do in this, right? It's going to walk them through it. You click on a specific thing and it says, do you want to be guided through creating this transaction? Yes or no. Okay, let me walk you through that transaction. The chatbot is not going to walk you through a transaction. It's going to try to create the transaction for you. Like, for example, when we said, I want to get away, and it's going to start saying, okay, when is your request? So it's going to try and create that requisition for you, but a chatbot is never going to try and teach you how to do the screens in PeopleSoft. Chatbot's trying to bypass screens in PeopleSoft. So again, starting the formation of a compare and contrast between the two, hopefully that helps. I think as you see the OGL, if you come to the OGL session later today, you'll see kind of perhaps how you might think about them used differently, and you might come to your own conclusions about how they compare and contrast. All right, so if anybody put chat into the platform, the platform, whatever we call the platform, I can't see it. So if you have any other questions, just please unmute yourself and ask the question. I do see one additional something in chat. Assuming chatbot will gather information from the bidders, does this sum up the information and provide to the module administrators to take action accordingly? Some information. So this is from Seema Chowdhury. Do you want to expand on your question? I'm not sure exactly where I'm at. I want to make sure I understand your question.
Sure, Cameron. This is Seema Chowdhury, and we get this question a lot from our bidders that the person who registered does not work with the county anymore. So they want to take that person out and add a new person. So in a situation like that, if we are using Chatbot, will Chatbot gather the information from the bidder and provide it to us, or would it record, take off the existing contact and add a new one?
So I think I understand your question. So again, somebody logs in before they get to the chatbot, right? So they've already logged in, they've already authenticated that they're a person that has access. So if I understand you correctly, you're talking about a person that's no longer with the supplier organization. the chatbot wouldn't know that that person's no longer with that organization, because that person had a user ID associated with that supplier in PeopleSoft. So the chatbot
Right.
would think that that person is still authenticated as a person. So chatbot's not going to solve that problem. You have to solve that problem with probably a separate business process.
Right. So my question is, would the chatbot collect all this information what the bidder has already provided, and it can be sent to a certain email so people can take action on it?
So you're asking if a new chatbot can be created that would essentially create an output of a request for an ID, and that request would be sent to somebody internally for them to sort of evaluate. Did I get that correctly?
Yeah, it could be a new chatbot if it does not exist anymore.
Yeah, I think so. So I don't think any delivered chatbot is going to do that for you. So what you're asked for, you can build your own. I didn't talk about that. It is in the deck about how you can take a delivered chatbot delivered skill, and you can to build your own. So you can build your own chatbots. And I didn't really talk about it. I think there's a slide or two in the deck for that. But you can build your own. And so you'd want to do that. You want to build your own that somehow captured, again, the intents of the person, and then capture that information and send that off to somebody internally. In addition to that, if you're asking, there is a level of, I'll call it analytics, that's captured with the actual requests that come through and everything that's happening through that chatbot. All that's captured in sort of metadata, and you get access to that data. Again, that's not exactly what you asked about, but I'm just saying that is captured as well behind the scenes for your administrators.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I don't know if I answered your question. Hopefully that sort of give you a couple more ideas there.
No, sure, it does help. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, well.
Hey,
So is there another question? Okay. Steve, do you have a question? All right, started to hear a question from Steve, and then I didn't hear anything. So we're over time, so I'm gonna cut it off there. Steve, if you have a question, just ping me and send a message through the email link there on the deck, and happy to answer any other questions after the fact. So thanks, everybody. Have a great conference, and I hope to see you at the OGL session here in another couple hours.
Thank you very much, Cameron.
Thank you. Great session.
Yeah, great. Thank you.